Just because you can't see growth doesn't mean it isn't happening. What eventually becomes visible often begins as an invisible possibility, patiently cultivating itself until the day it can no longer be hidden. The outcome is the visible evidence of a story that has been unfolding long before anyone could see it. The process serves the goal, and the outcome reveals what was quietly building all along. Stay with me, because what seemed obvious at first turned out to be only part of the story. Years ago, I stood before a patch of land behind my home. To most people, it was just another neglected piece of ground, easy to overlook or dismiss, and certainly not the sort of place that invited dreams. The field had been neglected for years. Weeds had taken root wherever they pleased, rocks were scattered across the landscape, and the soil had grown hard from being left untouched for far too long. Yet somehow, when I looked at it, I found myself seeing beyond its present condition. I saw what it could become. I saw a garden. In my mind, the garden was already there. I could see rows of vegetables stretching across the field, flowers blooming along the edges, and baskets overflowing with a harvest that existed only as a possibility. For now. The vision felt so real that I began talking about it. I told friends and neighbors about what I'd planned to create, describing a future that, at the time, only I could see. Most smiled politely. A few nodded in encouragement. Others seemed quietly skeptical, and honestly, I understood why. I couldn't blame them. They were seeing the field as it was, while I was seeing it as it could be. They saw weeds. I was describing tomatoes. They saw rocks. I was describing flowers. To them, I was talking about something that didn't exist. To me, I was talking about something that had yet to reveal itself. One morning, as I stood looking over the field and imagining what it could become, an elderly neighbor stopped by. He listened to my idea. When I finished, he smiled and said, "A garden begins in the imagination, but it only appears through cultivation." At the time, I thought he was talking about gardening. Years later, I realized he was talking about much more than that. His words stayed with me long after he had gone. The next day, I picked up a shovel and began clearing weeds. The vision had come easily. However, the cultivation didn't. Every patch of ground seemed to reveal more rocks, more roots, and more reasons to quit. But I kept returning. Day after day, the field began to change. Certainly not all at once, and not always in ways that were easy to notice, but little by little it was becoming something different. Eventually, the soil was ready. I planted the seeds, watered them, and waited for the first signs of life to appear. Days passed, then weeks, yet every time I looked at the field, it still appeared empty. There were moments when the stillness of the land made me wonder whether anything was happening beneath the surface at all. Even sleep felt like wasted time spent away from the work I thought should be producing results. But all along, while I rested, the seeds continued doing what seeds do. Beneath the soil, roots were quietly taking hold, and growth was unfolding where no one could see it. Someone once said, "Some of the most important growth happens long before there is any visible evidence that it is happening at all." This field taught me something important. Not all growth is visible. Changes are always taking place, long before there is any evidence that they exist. So as the weeks passed, people became curious. A friend offered seeds, a neighbor brought compost, even children stopped by to ask how the garden was going. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the same is true of people. We're quick to celebrate the harvest, but rarely do we notice the process. We admire the transformation, but often overlook what made it possible. Nothing had emerged above the surface yet, but long before the harvest arrived, the belief behind it had begun influencing the people around me. Then one morning, I saw them. Tiny green shoots pushing through the soil, small enough to miss if you weren't paying attention, but to me they were undeniable proof that something had been growing beneath the surface all along. Weeks later, the flowers arrived, then the vegetables, then, at last, the harvest I had imagined all those months before. People who had once been skeptical seemed surprised by what the field had become, as though it had appeared suddenly. But standing there among the harvest, I realized something. The garden had been teaching me a lesson. Proof of harvest hadn't begun when the first shoots appeared, not even when the seeds entered the ground either, because before then, the garden had already been growing in shape and form. It was actually the moment the possibility took root in my mind. Everything that followed after that, belief, action, patience, rest, influence, and growth, they simply revealed what had been quietly unfolding in me. Most people see the harvest, the manifestation, the desire fulfilled. What they rarely see are the countless moments when nothing appeared to be happening. Perhaps the garden was trying to teach me that just because you can't see what's going on doesn't mean something isn't. So if you're in a season of cultivation, don't be discouraged by what you can't see yet. And if this story resonated with you, leave a comment below and tell me, are you cultivating right now? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy thoughtful stories about growth, faith, mindset, and personal transformation, consider subscribing and joining me for the next one.